Minutes before 7 o'clock. Now, this week can be a very stressful time for thousands of 2017 grade 12 learners as they cope with the release of their results and feelings of hopelessness and uncertainty about their future. The Independent Examinations Board Matric results 2017 are being released today, and the 2017 National Senior Certificate results will be released on Friday. And to talk to us more about the coping mechanisms for learners awaiting their results and what happens after they are released, we're joined in studio by Charity Mkone, a clinical psychologist at Matric. A very good morning to you, Charity, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, this is a very stressful time for matric learners, the matriculants, and parents as well, yes. Because some may even be stressed as to what happens now, and some are even burdened by university fees.
Yes. So you said it's absolutely right that it's not just the burden on the matriculant, but also on the family. And I mean, right now, it's not even a matter of just passing or failing. It's about getting the good grades, good enough grades to be able to go into a tertiary institution, to be able to apply and qualify for a program that the learner would like to do. So I think this is indeed a time that is actually more stressful than the actual exams for the matriculants, for the school-leaving learner. And it can bring a lot of burden and a lot of strain even on the family members because of the anxiety that the young person carries, but also on the family members in terms of the funding. For some people, the marks that they get and the grades that they get also depend on the funding. So I guess there's a lot at stake and a lot to be anxious about over and above just passing and failing. And that's why it can be a very difficult time for the matriculants and the parents alike.
And certainly most difficult, so much so that it can even lead to suicide, yes. before the release of the results. So what are some of the coping mechanisms that matriculants can apply at this hour?
So for most of the matriculants, what is very important for them is the support from the family. So if you have adequate support from friends and family and from other people to foster that thing that it's not the end of the world, as cliche as it might sound. It is something that's very difficult for the person to hear because of the heightened levels of anxiety and the state that they're in. But it is just reinforcing that there are other opportunities. And I mean, with saying that it's not the end of the world, to qualify that with all the other opportunities and all the other things that they can do to either better their marks or if they didn't make it or didn't pass. And I think the role that needs to be played by parents and caregivers and other adults around the school leaver at this time is pivotal, because they need to check up on them regularly to see if there are any signs of any mood changes, any symptoms of a depressive episodes that might be occurring, and also to be very vigilant. And I think because they're already under so much pressure and that it's a very difficult time for them, to enlist the support of friends and family, and also to call places like SADC and speak to a counselor or speak to anyone to realize that they're not alone, because it is a difficult time and they can feel very isolated and feel like it's something that's happening only to them, but to realize that there are people to talk to. And also the plea is to the parents and the family members to really create a very supportive environment. And because understandably so, for a lot of matriculants, they place a lot of pressure also on themselves, over and above the pressure that comes from families. So at this time for families and for parents and caregivers to be very supportive.
And having said that, what are some of the obvious signs that a learner is struggling to cope with the stress?
So simple things like overeating or undereating at certain points, if there's any changes in sleeping patterns, if there are any concurrent, like worries all the time, if the person's worrying all the time and there's changes in sleeping patterns. And a lot of the times, suicide rates become quite high because of the hopelessness or the feelings of hopelessness, or the feeling that it's the end of the road and there's no other options if the person does not perform as well as they would have wished, or if they don't pass. And for parents, also friends and family members to be on the lookout. So if the person jokes about suicide or talks about how they're going to end their life, but in most cases, the teenager or the school leaver might isolate themselves. So also to watch out for isolation, and if they stop activities that they once enjoyed and things that they used to do before, if they suddenly stop doing that, for parents and other people around them to really be vigilant.
When do you suggest is the right time to educate learners about coping mechanisms? Do you think it should be after they've written their exams, or shortly before the results are released, or after?
I think with stress, there's different types of stresses. So the stress that they undergo when they are writing exam is known as positive stress. So although they may be anxious and worked up about it, but it propels them to action. It's not stress that, in most cases, it's not stress that debilitates them and paralyzes them, because they can do something about it. They can study, they can work hard, even though they're under severe pressures and stressful situations. But this kind of stress is unfortunately a negative stress, because even though you get worked up and you feel anxious, there's not much that you can really do about it now. The results have been out there, they're just waiting to be published and for you to see it. And it's very important for the distinction to be made between those types of stresses, because in this case, unfortunately, even through stressing on the anxiety, as much as you can't help it, there's very little that you can do to make the stress help propel you. But things like to reduce the thinking and to just make the waiting period better, things like physical activity, doing things that you really enjoy and things that you love, although it might be very difficult to be fully immersed in anything else except waiting and worrying about the results. But it's very important. Physical activity is one thing that's very important, and also finding things that you really enjoy and things that you love to do, and get going on those.
Yeah. And what is that important thing that matriculants should remember as the results are being released?
That disappointment is not the end of the road. It is just a speed bump on the road, and that the world is actually their oyster. There are so many more options. So if the matriculant did not get into that university of their choice or the program of their choice, it is disappointment, and it's actually a good learning curve. As challenging and as stressful and as difficult as it is a good learning curve to realize that disappointments are a part of life, and unfortunately we don't always get what we want, but disappointments are a curveball and not something that means the end of the road. And it's something that they will experience not just now, but for the rest of their lives, and that will help them in being able to cope with stresses and disappointments even later in life.
And I'm sure you will agree with me that the release of matric results is not really about the matriculants themselves. So many people are involved in this process, particularly the parents, and it's quite sad that parents have been left out of this, yet they're also very important in trying to help the matriculants cope. I mean, I would imagine a parent becoming so disappointed that after 12 years, his or her child fails. You know, they really take it hard. And what can be done to help the parents as well?
Yes, and I think you're quite right in saying that the parents get left out, because in most cases it's thought, and it is akin to the stage of development that the teenagers in, where everything, they're quite consumed by their lives and everything that's happening to them. And I think for the parents to also realize that, to foster a way of coping which will help the teenager or the school leaver in also coping. So I think for the parent as well, to the expectations, to maybe tweak those a little bit and meet the person where they are. So I think it's very nuanced. It's not just the disappointment of the parents, but the pressures that the parents might put on the person, and for various reasons. Like I mentioned, that it's probably the funding.
And I think the onus is on organizations like yours to, to involve the parents as well.
Yes. So places like SADC, where you can even arrange maybe to have family counseling, or bringing the family together to be able to talk about it, and the kind of feelings that arise from this time.
Give us the numbers that learners can call.
All right, so the toll-free number for SADC is 0800 12 13 14.
12 13 14.
Yes.
All right, Charity, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Well, that is Charity Mkone. She is the clinical psychologist at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, speaking to us about, how matriculants and learners can cope, about the release of their results. And, should you find yourself in a very compromising situation, your daughter, your son, or you have failed, make sure that you call this number 0800 12 13 14, and you get all the advice and all the counseling that you'll possibly need. It is 7 o'clock. It's time now to take a look at the latest news.